When it comes to a bandsaw, I get the most out of it, and you can too if you follow these tips. Unplug the machine, open the cover, and lubricate the bearings. Wherever you have ball bearings, once a year or twice a year if you use your bandsaw a lot, use bearing lubricant by Bostitch. That's important. If you don't lubricate the bearings, even if they say they're permanently sealed, you're going to have problems. The next thing is, I don't have any rust on the surface of my cast iron tables, and I use top coat for that. Twice a year, I follow the instructions, spray it out, let it dry for about 3 minutes, buff off the excess, and boy, it makes it slick and it stops the rust. And then on the blade, did I mention it's unplugged? Whenever I'm touching a bit or a blade, it's always unplugged, always. So here's the deal on the blade. And I'm going to roll this wheel around, never sticking my finger inside here because it could hit a pin on the tensioner that would lay your finger open. And watch that guard right there. And that's what this really is. This guide block mechanism is a guard. So as you roll this around, make sure your finger stays on the outside edge. And what you do is you shake up the dry coat and you spray the blade on one side and then you spray it on the other. You buff out the excess, and that actually helps to give you a cooler cut. It's really important on a bandsaw to buy a good blade. This is a silicon steel Timberwolf. Excellent blade, I love them. I get the most out of it. How in the world can you get a good blade if it doesn't have good steel in it? You get what you pay for on a bandsaw. If you want to get rid of 100% of your drift, buy an excellent blade, one that costs more than $20. The universal blade in my shop is a 1/4 inch wide, 6 tooth per inch blade. I can do a ton of jobs with that and still cut the radius of a 1/4 when it's properly tuned up. And to that end, what's the single most important thing on a bandsaw? Lots of tension. So on the tension scale, I always run it a couple notches higher than it says for the width of the blade. That's 1/4 inch, and right now it's set on just a little over 1/2 inch. And I have to back the tension off at the end of the day when I'm through with the job to stop from pressing flat spots in the crown of the tires and also fatiguing the spring or the blade. So you do that and put a tension sign on your bandsaw so you'll remember to retension it before you make the cut, and you're in business. And then the final thing right here is I open this cover. Come right on in here and look at this. These support bearings should be gently kissing the blade and yet still moving when you move the blade. And the thrust bearing behind it has to be resting right behind the blade so that it supports it and it doesn't push this back so the metal would roll the set off the teeth. If you have drift, you have damage to the set and the teeth. So protect that. And then the other thing is, once all this is done, you have to make sure the column is securely locked in place. And the final thing is, that blade has to be tracking right on the crown of the tire, the top tire, and locked in place. If you do all those things on the bandsaw, it will cut true, zero drift. One final tip, make sure you adjust the support bearings and the thrust bearing below the table so that they support the blade the same way it's adjusted above the table.